Hello everyone, it's Dasha, and on my channel I help you take your English to the next level. In today's lesson, you're going to learn all the different ways to say "for example." And since I really want you guys to put today's lesson into practice, make sure to stay around till the end for your homework. What inspired me to make this video is that I recently realized how often I use the phrase "for example" in everyday life. Even when I make YouTube videos and talk to you guys, I constantly say "for example" or "as an example." So then I did some digging and put together 12 different ways to say "for example." We'll start off by taking a look at the basic synonyms and then the more creative ones. Now, you'll notice that some of them are less formal or more formal than others, but I'll be sure to point that out when we get there. So let's get started. First, we're going to look at the basic synonyms of the phrase "for example." If you're studying English at an intermediary, upper intermediary, or above level, you might have used "for instance" in your essays. And "for instance" is a great alternative to "for example." So rather than saying "for example, we could go hiking," you could say "for instance, we could go hiking." Using "for instance" in daily speech does come off quite formal, but there's absolutely nothing wrong with using formal words every now and then. But as far as essays are concerned, "for instance" is a perfect substitute. Then there's also the phrase "in particular" or even "specifically." Both of these are not exactly direct synonyms of "for example," but they do the same job, if you will. Have a look at this sentence. "We should be grateful if you could please forward us the documents. In particular, we require a copy of your passport and a recent utility bill." Or specifically, "We require a copy of your passport and a recent utility bill." As you can see, "for example" cannot really replace "in particular" and "specifically," because an example is a broad illustration of an idea. On the other hand, "in particular" or "specifically," they try to narrow down an example. But I've seen and heard non-native speakers use "in particular" and "for example" interchangeably, so don't make the same mistake. Then you might have also heard of the phrase "such as," which again is slightly formal. Take a look at this sentence. "Last night, Jacqueline prepared a wide array of dishes. For example, she made salads, quiches, and various desserts." It sounds kinda lengthy, and we can definitely improve this sentence and say, "Last night, Jacqueline prepared a wide array of dishes, such as salads, quiches, and various desserts." Now, suppose that you got accepted into the university of your dreams. How would you feel? I could have also said, now, let's say, for example, that you got accepted into the university of your dreams. How would you feel? A small warning here. You probably shouldn't really use "suppose that" in a formal essay in, say, the IELTS. But I do encourage you to use it in daily conversation. So those were the sort of basic variations of "for example." But how about we get a little bit more creative and spice things up? One of my all-time favorite ways of saying "for example" is "imagine that" or "let's imagine that." It almost instantly ignites your imagination and sparks your creativity. Here again, "imagine that" is not a precise word-for-word synonym of "for example," but it's very, very similar. For instance, the criminal punishment for theft is 10 years imprisonment. Imagine that, or let's imagine that Bob steals $100 from Kate. He will very likely go to prison for 10 years. Now, you could have also said, the criminal punishment for theft is 10 years imprisonment. For example, if Bob steals $100 from Kate, he will very likely go to prison for 10 years. To me, the second sentence just sounds a bit more dry and also boring than the first one. "Imagine that" as opposed to "for example" makes it more flavorsome. Similarly, you could say, "let's pretend that." Again, this is more informal than anything else. I wouldn't really put it in an English essay. But in terms of context, you can start off by explaining something like a concept, and then instead of saying, for example, you can use let's pretend that. So I could say to you, the formula for distance is speed multiplied by time. Let's pretend that a vehicle is traveling at 100 kilometers per hour and arrives at its destination in 45 minutes. Another phrase that a lot of native English speakers use in everyday speech is picture this. Like you could say, you've really worked hard this year and need a vacation. Picture this. You could be sitting on a beach in Hawaii sipping a cocktail. It sounds a lot better and less awkward than you've really worked hard this year and need a vacation. For example, you could sit on a beach in Hawaii sipping a cocktail. But if you want to use an alternative to example in a formal essay, you can use by way of illustration. By way of illustration, nauseous gases have an adverse effect on the environment. Now, one of my other favorite phrases, and you've probably noticed it by now, is let's say that. Let's say that you want to buy a new car, but you don't have the cash. You could take out a loan. Or let's say that you want to improve your English. Well, then make sure to hit that subscribe button to never miss an English lesson. Moving on, if you really want to sound as close to a native speaker as possible, try using to give you an idea rather than for example. So you could, as an example, describe to me the price of property in central London and say, to give you an idea, a 2-bedroom flat near Goodge Street costs about £2 million. I kid you not. And finally, I've saved the best for last. The highly versatile phrase that you can include in essays and daily conversations is case in point. On its own and without any context, case in point might make little sense to you, but it quite literally means for example. You can either use this expression at the beginning or at the end of a sentence, such as, several countries' economies have prospered after being colonized. A case in point is India. Alternatively, we could also say several countries' economies have prospered after being colonized. India is a case in point. And this is really the same as saying, for example, India, or India is an example of this. So if you want to impress an English examiner, definitely add case in point to your vocabulary list. And now comes the best part of the video, your homework. I want you to form 5 sentences with any of the 12 phrases that you've learned today and drop them into the comment section of this video. I will most gladly mark your sentences and give you my feedback. Thank you guys for tuning in today, and let me know if you've enjoyed this video by smashing that like button. I'll see you guys later.